Okay guys, so this is 5.1. I hope everybody had a good spring break. Yeah, so here we go. So we're on chapter 5.1. Okay, and this is simplifying identities. Okay, I posted in class pages this lovely formulas and identities page. Hopefully you've got that printed out. If you need it printed out, please email me and I'll get that to you. Okay, so what we're first going to look at is some strategies. Okay, one thing about this chapter is it is all about creativity, and there's multiple ways of doing things, so it's a little tricky as far as like here's exactly what you do, but there are some things that you can do that work no matter what. So our first one is always change everything to sine and cosine. Okay, so that's our first one. If you could change it to sine and cosine, you're going to do it. Next one is look for Pythagorean identities. Okay, so if you have that paper, you'll see the Pythagorean identities are right here. Okay, that's just more blurry. So these are Pythagorean identities. Look for those. Those actually pop up quite often. And when they do, we can use those identities to make life a lot better. Okay, if you have any binomials, multiply them together. So multiply binomials together. Okay, so if you have opportunity, you're going to FOIL that out, multiply them together. If you have fractions, always find a common denominator. Okay, if you can split fractions, factor, okay, a lot of different things you can do. These are the main strategies I tend to use when I am simplifying identities. And as I said, this is kind of a creative process. You get to pick and choose how it goes. So for our first one, we are going to do something like this. So we have cosine x tangent x. And what I want to do is I want to simplify this down to the smallest one term that I can. So if we look at our identities, we see that tangent is sine theta, or sine theta over cosine theta, or we knew y over x. So we're going to say, first using our first strategy to change everything to sine and cosine, we're going to say cosine x times sine x over cosine x. What this allows me to do is then, looking at this, I could take this and simplify out the cosine. So my answer is just sine x. So that's a very simple simplification. Okay, let's try one that's a little bit more complex, not too much, but a little bit. So we're going to do secant x cotangent x. Okay, again, I'm going to change everything to sine and cosine. I'm more familiar with sine and cosine versus the inverse identities. So I know secant is 1 over cosine x times, well, if tangent was sine over cosine, then cotangent x will be cosine x over sine x. Okay, and if you notice, we could take our cosines and simplify them out. So now I have 1 over sine x. Well, 1 over sine x is a reciprocal identity of cosecant. So this is going to be cosecant x as my answer. Okay, you see how those are simplifying nice and small? Okay. Here we go. We're just going to do a bunch of examples, and if we need to, we'll, I don't know, split this up into a couple of videos. So our next one I'm going to do is cosecant x over sine x. Okay, this one's tricky because cosecant is a reciprocal identity. So cosecant is 1 over sine x, and that's actually being divided by sine of x, right? Cosecant x divided by sine x. So 1 over sine x divided by sine x. So if I keep this, change that division to multiplication, that becomes 1 over sine x. Okay, well then that is going to give me 1 over sine squared x. Okay, when we multiply these, we don't put the squared with the x, we put it with the sine, meaning they have sine x times sine x. Sometimes what they did that for is because if you put the square with the x, it looks like you're talking about sine of x squared, not sine squared x. Okay, well 1 over sine we know is cosecant, so we're going to simplify this to cosecant squared x. So that one simplified down to cosecant squared x. Not as pretty as our other ones, but it's still a simplification. Okay, on the next video I'm going to do some harder ones, but I'm going to end this video so it's just not super long, and then make sure you watch the next ones because it does get a lot more complex.